Hello, welcome back to Gas Beauty Tabletop Football, where I'm in Dublin Airport on the way to fly home to Bristol. But we'll talk all about that in a minute. In the meantime, cheers.
What?
Hello, welcome back to Gas Beauty Tabletop Football. Now, let's get a drink of this Guinness down me. Delicious. So, what's this all about? Well, last weekend or the weekend before last, I went to Dublin, and the idea of me going there was to watch a Bows game, so that was achieved. But also, I was going to do a 36 hours in Dublin and then sort of tell you about how much it all costs and what I got up to show a bit of the game. Unfortunately, I ended up instead getting a little bit drunk with my Dublin mates and not recording any footage at all apart from what you've already seen and a little bit that I'll put at the end, which is very, very short as well. So instead, what I thought I'd do is give you a more detailed rundown of the costs of doing, if you like, an extreme day trip or 36 hours away. And that's what I'm going to do today. Okay, so I know we've run through costings a little bit in the Gasputio AGM, but this one's going to be in a little more detail. And as we tot up the costs, I will put them on the screen next to me so you can keep an eye on how much it's starting to total up to. Now, the first thing I got on this particular journey was the flight. And the reason I did that is because there's two main flight operators that you will use to go to Dublin. They're Aer Lingus and Ryanair. Now, prices fluctuate depending on how popular the weekend is and how late or early you leave it before you get your ticket. So on this case, I knew the date that I wanted to travel, so I was quite early in booking the flight. And also, it seems like it wasn't a particularly popular weekend for anyone to travel. So Ryanair, although I checked both, I got the apps for both those flight operators. Ryanair were doing flights there on the Friday morning, which is ideal, quite early in the morning. Gives you a day in Dublin, and then Irish football is generally on a Friday evening at 7:45 kickoff. So they were doing flights at 7 a.m. Was it 7 a.m.? It's usually around 7 a.m, like 7:30, 7:50, something like that. They were doing flights for £14.99 one way per person. Can't argue with that, can you? 15 quid and you're flying to another country. Job done. So I booked that straight away, and that's the first thing I got. The next thing I got, I had to wait for the tickets at the Bows to come out. Now, at the moment, Those have got reduced capacity because the stadium is being knocked down and eventually it's going to be completely replaced, and there's going to be a little interim period where they're playing at a different location, which I believe is yet to be determined. So it is reduced capacity at the minute, but what you have is the main stand that runs the length of the pitch, a little bit like a Gasputio here, and that's called the Jody stand. That tends to be filled up pretty quick with season ticket holders and club members, etc. And then the bit I don't know if you can see here, but if you notice the end of Gasputio Stadium, I've got a open top away and home end. That's a little bit like what Daily Mount Park is. So that end is open. That's called the Des Kelly stand, and it's all home fans. And then the only away section is opposite the far end of the Jody stand. It's called the Mono stand, and that's quite a compact little away end. So at the moment, it's quite tricky to get tickets, but you can get them if you're quick. So you go on the website, look when they're coming out, see the date that their tickets are coming out, and when that date comes, get on there and get the ticket. And the tickets for the Des Kelly end, the Des Kelly stand, were €20. So in our money, in English money, I think that works out. You have to excuse any sort of dodgy exchange rates I use here, because obviously it changes every time you purchase something over time. But I think at the time of purchase that worked out at £17.39 for the ticket to get into the Des Kelly end. So that's the ticket and the flight sorted. The next thing you have to sort out with the hotel. Now, Dublin hotels are, there's no other way of saying it, this is your expensive bit. It's expensive to stay there. And I think I've mentioned before that if you can find a room for £150 a night, that's pretty much the best you're going to find. Some of them are more like 200, 250, even £300 a night, depending on what it is you want. Now, we never stayed at the place we stayed at before. We stayed at a place called, if I remember rightly, Linden House. It's like a sort of, I want to say it's a B&B, but they didn't do breakfast. So it's like a sort of guest house. And they were doing a room for £152.34, which, again, if my what's it called, exchange is correct, is about €180. Now, that was a 2-star guest house, and when I had a look at the reviews, some of the reviews were a little bit poor on it, but having stayed there, I'll be honest with you, I think some of the reviews were a little bit heavy-handed, because my view was, it's a 2-star guest house, so if you're going to write a review about it, you've got to judge it as a 2-star guest house, and it's one of the most affordable places you can stay in Dublin. And when we were there, yeah, okay, some of the walls and perhaps the fittings are a little bit worn, but it's 150 quid to stay there, you know, and I was going there for one night. That's the best you're going to get. That's the best you're going to get. Unless you get some deal on a hotel, and we have stayed previously in a place called Clinky La, which I think I've mentioned, but even that on this particular date was more than £200 for the room. So, you know, it was a good deal. And I'll be honest with you, bedding was clean. Some people in the reviews are saying it was too small, but there was enough room to walk around. It was no different from staying in a Clinky La room, which is a private hostel room. Bathroom was clean. You know, it had clean towels, it had a TV in the room which worked, it had a kettle which worked, you know, it had everything you need, and it was clean, but it was a little bit, you know, it was a little bit, I'm not even going to say shabby, it was just a little bit, you know, it's also been used, so there's a couple of scuffs on the wall, nothing too bad, but it was perfectly clean. And you know, it had everything we need, so I think we'll probably use that again. But that was £152.34 per night. Okay, so that's our flight, our hotel, and our ticket into football there. We got to the airport on the day, had a pint in Lulsgate. For those of you who don't know, Lulsgate is Bristol International, used to be called Lulsgate Airport. The pint there is, I think, what's a pint of Guinness there now? I think it's £7.50. So we'll add that in, because that's, you know, almost a compulsory part of a holiday. And then we flew there, and then let's talk about travel, because I have mentioned this before. So we were there for 36 hours. Now, normally when we go to Dublin, we get a Leap card, and I will show you one of these in a minute. In fact, hold it there. This is a Leap visitor card. You can get Leap top-up cards as well, but as a visitor to Dublin, this is what you want to pick up. These come in 3 flavours, so this is a 24-hour one. You can get a 3-day one, so whatever that is, and then you can get a 7-day one. But they all look the same, and I'll tell you about the cost of them in a moment. Oh, I love Guinness. Anyway, so Leap cards. Now, a 24-hour visitors Leap card costs €8. So that's, again, excuse any sort of mistaken exchange rates. That is £6.75. And they come in, as mentioned, 1-day, 3-day or 7-day versions. The 1-day is €8, the 3-day is €18, and the 7-day is €24. Now, I can't say enough good things about these. €8, so 6¾ quid. This gets you travel on all Dublin bus services except the tour buses. Something called Go Ahead Island. I don't even know what that is. I've never had to use it. The Lewis tram, so that's a tram's got 2 routes. I think they're called a blue one and the green one. It basically goes across, so one goes up and down, one goes left and right. Very useful, very efficient. Also, it gets you unlimited travel within the Greater Dublin area on the Dart and on the commuter rail within the Greater Bristol area. Basically, I said Bristol again. What's going on? Greater Dublin area. Bristol's got nothing like this, by the way. So in the Greater Dublin area. So basically, when you go to Dublin and you're moving around, these are invaluable. I just don't understand. Well, they're just so good. So basically, don't be tempted not to get one. It should be one of the first things you buy when you are there. Now, we were there for 36 hours, so when we got there, obviously a 24-hour one isn't going to last the whole time, because what's good about these as well is that you can use these to get the bus from the airport into town. So literally walk out the airport, you turn left, you walk down to the there's like a little bus station, not a coach. What's the express called? Can't remember what it's called at the minute, but it's not the express coach. You walk past that and there's like a row of bus stops, and you can get on a bus that takes you right into town on this. And also, you can get right from Dublin city centre back to the airport on the bus as well, using this. Now, we wanted to do that on the way back, so it meant a 24-hour card. We couldn't get that straight away, so we got this in town, because I figured as long as we got it after 11 o'clock in the day, we were going to be coming back at 11:50 on the Saturday, so that would give us enough time on the car to get us back to the airport. So, because we were getting a 24-hour card, we basically wanted to get the express bus into town. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head now, but basically when you come out the airport, you basically look to the left and they're parked up there, and there's a little ticket booth right outside where you can get a ticket. It takes you direct into town, and that bus is a bit more expensive, that one. That is for one way, so a single into Dublin city centre is €10, which is roughly £8.44. You can get a return for that, but the reason I don't tend to like getting a return on that bus is because the pickup point is basically along the water a little bit in Dublin city centre, and I just found it, I sometimes find it a little bit more awkward to get the bus from there rather than get the bus from the centre on where you can pick one up on O'Connell Street, which is generally where you're hovering around. So that's just, you know, you may want to do it a different way. That's just the way I like to do it. So I get the airport, if I was going for 36 hours, get the airport express down, a single that costs €10, and then get a elite card and use that to come back on the normal bus when it's time to come home. Right, so moving on to incidental costs. So let's talk about things we've eaten and drank on the day. So when we got there, if you've never been to Dublin, there's a brilliant institution on O'Connell Street, right in the centre of Dublin, right by the spire, which you can't miss. It's a big silver spike that goes up to the heavens. And that institution is called Supermax. Now, so I'm going to tell you right now, anyone from Dublin watching this, as an Englishman, Supermax is brilliant. I love it. Supermax is like Ireland's version of McDonald's, basically. Now, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of whether or not they've used any names or anything like that they shouldn't. I'm sure they know exactly what it is they're doing. But I'm just telling you that the burgers in there are superior to some fast food burger chains that you may be used to over here in the UK. So if you get the opportunity, do go into Supermax, get one of their burgers, get one of their chips. They do chips with, like, you can get them with cheese on, or you can get them with, like, what's it called, chili on, with your burger. Milkshakes are also nicer for some reason, I don't know why. So we were going to go to Supermax. Unfortunately, it was closed. So instead, we thought we'd treat ourselves, and we went up to, just up from Supermax on O'Connell Street. There was a little, looked like quite a posh restaurant, to be honest with you. I think it was called Flanagan's or something like that. And I was a little bit like, oh, perhaps this is a bit too hoity-toity for us. But we went in there. They're very nice in there. We sat outside. They've got a little sort of glassed off area outside, and they were doing a breakfast. So we got a breakfast there, and that breakfast, for me, so for one person, I think, if I remember rightly, was €15.99, which exchanges to around £13.47. So £13.50 for a cooked breakfast. Little bit of a posh one, but it was enough. It wasn't a belly buster, but it was enough to eat. And that was a little treat for ourselves. So that's what we spent in the morning. Then, I'll be honest with you, this is where it started going wrong, because I'd already had a pint in the airport, a little can on the aeroplane. We had a couple of hours to kill before we could get to the hotel. And so we did wander around and have a look at a few things. And then I decided it was quite a sunny day, I needed a pint. And so we went into a couple of pubs. Now, one of my favourite pubs in Dublin is a pub that really I was shown by some of my friends that I'm getting to know over there. And that's a pub in the city centre called The Flowing Tide. Now, if you go to Dublin, there's lots of beautiful pubs in Dublin. But if you're in the city centre, right, yes, everyone wants to at least once go and visit the Temple Bar area, but it is a tenner a pint kind of area. It is going to be full of foreign people drunk, laying on the floor. It is going to be full of a lot of music, which is, let's just say, I don't know, Irish bands playing music, which is not necessarily Irish music, but people think it is. You know, a lot of Danny Boy and all that business. And you know, it is a spectacle, and it is worth going down the Temple Bar area at least once, and going, in fact, into the Temple Bar pub at least once, just because it is an amazing pub inside. It's, you know, very interesting. But if you're drinking on a sort of more normal level, then you need to sort of walk away from the Temple Bar, really, and stay in the outer areas of Dublin, and even in the city centre, find these other beautiful pubs that are in there. And one of them, and my favourite, is a pub called, as mentioned, The Flowing Tide. So find The Flowing Tide, go in there, sit down. It's a very quiet, decent, small but beautiful looking pub. Has a wide range of ales. And Guinness in there, and we'll use Guinness as a bit of a sort of measuring stick. Guinness in there is €6.80, I believe. Now, don't quote me on that. I might have got that wrong because I think I did an exchange calculation. It came up on my English bank balance as £5.83. Now, let's talk about this. You may think £5.83 for a Guinness is a little bit of a lot, but I live here in Bristol. If you went downtown and had a pint of Guinness, that would be a good deal straight away. You know, city centre is getting a little bit £7-8 a pint sort of jobby in some places. If I went at football, so even at Rovers, it's going to be £5.80 or something of that ilk. So £5.80 for a pint in Dublin city centre is fairly reasonable, because if you go over to Temple Bar area, just south of the river, like I say, it's going to be more like a tenner. Now, later on, we did stay in there a while, but later on, when we went out, we went to another pub, which is much further north in Dublin, much nearer where Dalymount Park, where the Bows play, and that pub was called the Old Triangle, AULD Triangle. Now that does look, when you get there, I suppose it looks a bit more, you know, like a sort of working class area, sort of pub. You go in, lovely pub, lovely people in there. And a pint of Guinness in there was €5.95, which comes out with my exchange, again, excuse any incorrect exchange rates, comes out at like £5.01. So let's call it a fiver. So for a fiver, you get a pint of Guinness in Dublin. Not bad at all. Now, there are other pubs in there, other pints in there as well. So a lot of other beers in there. Some of them are even cheaper than that. So it just goes to show, you know, when people say, oh, you're going to Dublin, that's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Yes, if you go down the touristy areas, down the Temple Bar, it is going to start getting expensive when you're getting around with the lads. It is. But it doesn't have to be that expensive. So if you sort of expand your, you know, your visiting area, particularly into North Dublin, because how it generally works is South Dublin, certainly when you cross over, it's a bit of a culture shock. It's quite posh immediately in South Dublin, past Temple Bar. And then if you go in North Dublin, it's much more a working class sort of area. And you get very reasonable, normal price pubs there, which, let's be honest, £5 a pint in a capital city, I think that's as good as you're going to get. And it's a nice pub as well, with, you know, friendly bar staff, friendly locals. I know it's always a little bit intimidating when you go somewhere new and you walk in a pub and someone's like, you know, the piano stops and everyone looks at you. But I have to say, Old Triangle, lovely. I was chatting with a barman, was chatting with some of the locals. Nice place, would well recommend it. And it's nearer the Bows than the city centre. So do check that out. But if you're in the city centre, definitely check out the Flowing Tide as well. So that was that. So then we went to the game, obviously all prepaid now. We had our ticket months in advance. And what did we do there? Bit of drinking. Now, in the Des Kelly stand, there's bars in the Jody stand, right? But you're not really meant to take drinks onto the stands. But in the Des Kelly stand now, I don't know if this is a new thing or ongoing thing, or it's going to be the same when they got the new stadium. But in the Des Kelly stand, they've got a little bar called the Rockshaw Bar. And Rockshaw is a Irish producer of cider and lager. So you Rockshaw lager and Rockshaw cider. But they also sell Guinness in there and a couple of other bits and pieces. And yeah, they've got a little sort of like a mobile bar there. And you can buy a pint there and take it onto the Des Kelly stand in a plastic. But nonetheless, you're watching Premiership football in Ireland with a beer in your hand. I mean, come on. Why can't we have that everywhere? We know why we can't have it in England, because we're bloody animals. That's why. But it's, you know, it's just nice, isn't it? So that one's a little bit more expensive than the Old Triangle. So a pint there, I think, if I wrote it down correctly, was €7, which is roughly £5.90. So that's to have a pint in Bohemian Football Club in Dalymount Park. Watching football, ace. Now, when we were there, also, we did get some food. Also in the little car park bit by the Des Kelly stand, they had a little food vendor, and he was called something, I've written it down as Bo's Piri Piri Bar. I don't know if he had an actual name, but it was like a piri piri chicken sort of place. And I was expecting, you know, the kind of typical food you would get at a football club. And he was doing, he did quite a few things, but one of them was like a sort of chicken burger with like lettuce fries with piri piri powder on, or whatever they call it, seasoning on. And that, we got one meal of that, and me and the missus shared it. Talk about it in a minute. But that, I think, how much was that? Was that £15.99? I think that was €15.99, which again is like £13.50, which does sound like a little bit much, but it was enough to feed two of us. And I'm going to tell you right now, the waffle fries in it, delicious. I would have paid for them in a restaurant. They were lovely. The burger wasn't some cheap burger just chucked on a thing. A fat, delicious chicken burger. Oh, just lovely. Well worth the money and well worth having a go at. So that is all the costs of that. There are a few other things as well, like on the way back, we got a Burger King in the airport where you can, even in the morning, you can get a pint of Guinness or a pint of Heineken with your meal. So I did. And then we came home. But a lot of that food and drinks, obviously that's down to your personal preference. One other thing I did want to mention, when you go on Ryanair and Aer Lingus, but particularly Ryanair, they do like to charge you for extra things that you utilize on their flight service. Now our flight was $14.99. You can pick seats, which tends to range from €8 to 20 odd euros. On the way there, we didn't bother picking seats. We were just randomly allocated. So I was down on row 25 by a window, and my missus was up on something like row 14. I've done all these costs, by the way, as if I was there on my own. Just so if you go on your own, you know what to expect. So yeah, we didn't pick seats. I wouldn't recommend you do that. And if you're on your own, there's no point anyway. The flight is like 50 minutes, you know, just sit wherever you are and put up with it. So that'll save you a few quid. And also, with travelling, and I brought me my little bag here, we don't ever pay for any luggage. Now, I've always had this thing where I think people just take too bloody much away with them. So what we've got are these little bags. Now, these little bags, you can buy them. Not going to advertise the actual brand. In fact, there's no point, I might as well tell you. This one's called Cabin Max, but there's hundreds of different types that do the same thing. They're specifically for carry-on bags. Now, if you have a carry-on bag with Ryanair, you, as long as it fits in their dimensions and you can slide it under the seat in front of you, you've got no baggage cost. If you get a bag that's just slightly bigger than this to put in the overhead locker, you've got to pay for it. And if you're taking a huge, great suitcase, you've also got to pay for that. We don't pay for any of that. I put it in here, and if it don't fit in, I don't take it. I'm only going for 36 hours. What do I need? Change of underwear, change of socks, perhaps a couple of extra t-shirts, you know. I was wearing the shorts that I wore. What? You don't have to pay for luggage. So that's what we do for luggage, never pay for that. So that keeps it down as well. Yeah, I think that's about it, really. That's a cost breakdown. I don't know what's written on the screen next to me, obviously, but you can see it. And obviously, a lot of that stuff is down to your choice. And also the flights will chop and change their price depending on how late you leave it and how popular or unpopular the weekend is. All right? Good. Well, a very good time was had by all when I went there, I think. Coming back the next day on a Saturday was a little bit of a struggle, not going to lie. But made it home and everything went to plan. And next time I go, I really will try to do a full proper video of it. All right? All right. Okay. So until then, up the gas and up the bows.